Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Michele Burklund. I'm the Chief Science Officer here at Puriya, and this is our Living Well series where we interview amazing people and give you the tools and foundation to live a healthy life. And this week, we have a very special guest with us. We have Joshua Native Kirk. So welcome, Joshua. You have a very interesting background.
Thank you.
You're an off-grid living expert, a reality TV consultant, an adventurer, a minimalist. I love the scholar of the woods too. I think that's perfection. And founder of Four Winds Survival School. So we have lots to talk about today about many different aspects of nature and your experience. So
Absolutely.
I will read a little bit about your background for our viewers so they can understand how you've accumulated all of these great life skills that we all need too. From a young age of 6, Joshua was hunting game, setting traps, tanning fur, and building his family's first homestead from scratch. People say it can't be done. Well, they did it. You have to be willing to live small and work hard. The rewards led to financial and mental freedom and self-sustainability. Joshua has survived through one of Utah's worst winter blizzard storms with just his saddlebags, pack horse, 22 caliber rifle, 45 long Colt. I'm not sure what that is, but to keep the bears and lions at bay. Also, while feeding himself on tiny hens, wild herbs, and drinking cold water. And now you still haven't, you still have a home right now without central heat and air in a self-built, self-sustainable log cabin, which sounds amazing, 100% self-sustainable, off-the-grid homestead. So welcome to the show, and we have lots to talk about, for sure. So
Absolutely.
I'll start off a little bit. I think we have like a hint of a delay, so I'll wait a little bit after each question. I think we have about a 1 second delay with the live. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so first off, I would love to hear more about your upbringing because you literally grew up in this nature-based lifestyle. So tell us a little bit about your background and your upbringing.
So I was raised for most people to kind of understand my background a little bit more, or to be able to identify with the Amish Mennonite. That's my background. Home. I did not. I went through homeschooling. My homeschooling lasted until I was about 11, and I started working full time. And it was different. I wasn't around a lot of kids. I wasn't around a lot of people. And when you're young, I don't think you know to appreciate it. You just kind of see what other people are doing and you just kind of get lost in your own world. But I think, by the time I was probably 6, because, being raised 6 or 7, it was just like I found an appreciation for it, actually. Starting off, we built our own home sawmill. We wood burning cook stove. I had an outhouse. I'm probably one of the only 34-year-olds living in a modern society today that had an outhouse until I was years of age. And it created this, when you connect to nature, it helps you connect more to yourself. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper later. But it was a change. Now I call it touching the earth. It brings an experience once you live something and you touch it and you feel it. And once you experience it, then it's either you hate it or for me, it was just it was a natural high. So went through life completely self-sufficient, off the grid. And And I will tell you up front that the best therapy is not using a rough sawn lumber outhouse during the winter, especially one with no toilet seat, because you tend to find splinters in your bum. We'll keep it clean. And and we for some reason never had a door on our outhouse, so I got a little bit more experience than those who had doors on their outhouses.
Oh, goodness.
um, yeah, so it was either learn to connect away at an early age, and I loved it. Actually, it's it builds character. So growing up like that, it really built character. We built our house ourselves. When I started working full time, I at 11, I was really starting to read a lot. I was started reading way early in life, and it kind of started creating a vision, a future vision of what I wanted to see, what I wanted to experience, what I wanted to do, and having those self-sustainable fundamentals in my back pocket. Being raised like that, you really don't have anything else. And it just, it puts a drive in you. I think Horst Kephart talked and said it best. Horst Kephart was a founder of the Smoky Mountain, and I've worked a lot with a Kephart Foundation. And Horst Kephart was a librarian. In St. Louis, Missouri, and never got out and experienced much. And he started reading and seeing other people's stories, and things started to become light. Like, man, what am I doing here in the city? Why, and he was very depressed, and it was the same with me. A ceiling. I love the way I was raised, but I wanted to see more of the world and experience it in a deeper fashion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the beginning, early stages there.
Nice. So the seed was planted. The seed was planted at that time, and you really found your passion in all of that. I mean, and an experience too. You found it and you appreciated it and had to kind of go through all the uncomfortable parts too, which in the end you appreciate even more once getting through there. So here at Puriya, we're all about holistic living and embracing nature. And of course, I think you take it to a whole new level, which I really respect. And you have a very back to the basics approach. So tell our viewers more about how you live on a day-to-day basis, how you connect to nature each day and what you do and how you're living now, if you have an outhouse or what's part of your daily life.
I got away from the outhouses, a little bit early in life. Got to the point where you kind of, I had a strong dislike for that. But so starting where you started with holistic living. So I was born at home. Being born at home, we didn't have, I've been to a doctor 2 times in my life. So when we got sick, it was all self-treated. We didn't go to a family doctor. At that time, we couldn't afford a doctor. So I remember breaking my arm, just to kind of give you a quick background. I messed my arm up, and we set it and wrapped it with sheetrock mud and tape and fixed. But I think the biggest goal with for one thing, if you're going to thinking of going off grid, it's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of work. However, I think misconceptions that's out there is health, and to be self-sustainable. First of all, you need to be self-sustainable with yourself and your own health and your fitness. Mm-hmm. I was speaking at an engagement at a big prepper convention quite some time ago, and the things I was talking about is, if you can't, first of all, you just like being self-sustainable, or you just like you're a survivalist, or you don't have to fit in that category to enjoy the outdoors. Of course, it's something that you're interested in doing, or you are doing currently. Then if first of all, if you can't do 5 pull-ups, and you need to start investing in your fitness and your health more than buying gear. And I think that's what it goes back to. So I grew up We raised our own meat. We raised our own eggs. We milked our goats. We made our own cheese. Still do all the above to this day. And you know, processed foods, I think, is the biggest issue. I won't go
Mm-hmm.
too deep into that, but I think processed foods are the biggest issue. It's like, if you're planning on doing if you were planning on doing a home birth, then you can't let yourself get out of shape. You have to prep for that. It's not like you can, if you're living off grid, you can't just, and you're not going to, let's just say you live in the middle of the wilderness and you don't have that doctor available, and if your water breaks and boom, you're in delivery. So for that, I mean, and so planning is everything for your health, being ready for that, keeping yourself active, keeping yourself exercise, eating well. And for 2 years growing up, I was a 100% raw foodist. Well, I can't say 100%. I would eat meat. Sorry, my phone is ringing in the background. I would eat meat, and the only meat I would eat was what I would actually had self-harvested. So looking at that, I wouldn't eat any meat from the stores. If I went out to eat with friends, I ate a raw set, and I did that for 2 years. And I'm kind of doing that. So basically, the only meats I eat now is pretty much what we were. We're going to pause just for a second because my phone is going nuts. That's so connected. That's my apologies.
That's part of being live. It's part of the live filling.
Yeah. So, all right. So moving forward, it's health is a big thing, but and sacrifices. And when you eat healthy, you're making sacrifices. And by saying that, you're not partaking in everything else that everyone else is doing. And it builds your psyche. It builds self-motivation, especially when you start seeing change. You start feeling that change on the inward man, experiencing psychologically speaking. And it's like the psychology of survival. And I think fasting, I still 24 to 48 hours a week because I think fasting important things for the human mind and the body, and human mind first, because when we think survival, it's from neck up mostly. It's all skill set. It's knowledge is power. It's in the head. So fasting teaches you patience. It creates an experience that you can have with nature to connect, because that's what we were meant to be, indigenous peoples living off the land, and we've gotten so far away from that. It's a little, I'm kind of hardcore about this, but it's a little disgusting at times, in my opinion.
Right. I mean, I feel like everybody is trying to go back to exactly how you live and how you were raised. I think they went so far one way that they're all trying to go back and do all of these amazing things that you're doing now too. And I mean, right now, I feel like in the last couple of years, there's so much research on intermittent fasting, exactly what you're doing. Science is finally catching up and talking about it, even though it's been an ancient practice for thousands of years. We're finally catching up, or at least part of us are. Part are still going down that way, and part are waking up and wanting that basic life, which is almost a luxury now instead of the basics.
Well, something I was thinking about the interview yesterday. I was in the backcountry, and you talk about intervention. Indigenous peoples in the past, they didn't have a choice. I mean, they fasted as they were hunter gatherers, and that's what they were doing. They were going out gathering their food daily, breeding with the herds. They were following the herds as the herds migrated, the buffalo, the elk, the deer, etc. And so, what does fasting do? It connects us back to our. Let me think of a way to say this without getting too. We are indigenous peoples first. We might not be in the where originally, but we are where we are now by choice, of course. Being that is, what does it take to get back to that? So to get back to that, what is it going to take for me to first? I need to learn to say no to some things, and so technology. We'll talk to technology in America and the world as a whole to the point where, and we use it as business, so there's people that could call me hypocrites. I'm on several social out there for business. However, I don't allow it and would never allow it to trend. I'll follow trends. And so before we can talk nature, first we got to talk, because we're dealing with a century. So when we look at a 21st century society that has supply and demand and a house on Main Street for what? For freaking a currency, for a trade to have goods that now we need, because there's so many things out there that we don't need. The main essence of life, of survival, the actual definition of survival means the art of staying alive. We need food, we need fire, we need water, and we need shelter. Each metaphorical shape shifting of the mind. And by metaphorical shape shifting of the mind, what that does is it allows us to step away from a 21st century and find our quote unquote spirit animal. So our spirit animal can't be a fish, because a fish lives in water. We can't live in that environment. So we have to look at the environment that we live in and say, okay, what can I identify as? What do I want to go back to? So you could identify as a bear, you could identify as a wolf, a coyote, a fox, etc. But the whole idea is to take metaphorically and transition the humanistic mind into the thoughts of that animal. That animal cares nothing about cake and icing and technology and telephones and televisions and going out and partying on the weekends. They don't care anything about that. What they care is about where they're at, and at that they care about the moment that they're living in. So what does it take to live? First of all, it's something for me to kind of wanting to go back to the basics, because now they're wanting to reconnect because a disconnection because of technology. And I'm being long-winded, so just give me another second here. So for us to go back to nature and to understand how nature lives, for us to immerse ourselves in the wild, first of all, we have to disconnect from the modern world. How do we do that? And the best thing to do is to take time for yourself and go out, whether it's on a hike, whether it's starting out slowly, going on, biking, going camping, getting out there. And I recommend to do this, first of all, because of social media and so many trends, and, we can pick up a telephone and call someone anytime that we want to. We've gotten so wrapped up in society's drive for currency, or, that we really we have this available in ourselves. All we just have to do is exercise them, the skills that it takes to live, going back to food, fire, water, and shelter. To disconnect from that, we need to do it alone. So what happens when you go camping alone, or you get out in a dark place by yourself? You don't have someone to lean on, so to speak. All the trends go, then you're dealing with environment, climate, and opposition. Your environment could go be raining, it could be snowy, so the environment, there are plants around you. The climate, you might be in a tropical climate, you might be in a cold climate. Also, the opposition. Opposition could be wildlife, but most of the time, opposition is yourself. So by going alone, it makes you disconnect from the world and fight you, and sometimes face your own demons, because you face fear, anxiety, and all of these things. And these we create habits because we're used to having a phone that's text on or something like that. So by being by yourself, it forces you to reconnect and face your own demons to the point where you can connect back to who you are, who you were created to be. And once you can do that, then you can with other people, because until then, you're never gonna. If you don't know yourself, how can you connect with other people?
Right. I 100% agree with you, especially in today's age where everybody's looking down and holding their phone. And not paying attention to the world around them. And when you're in nature, I'm a big fan of hiking alone, and I've done a lot of those things alone. I don't have the greatest survival skills, so I'm more of like a car camper alone than, than deep in the forest. But but I completely support you and support that idea of being alone and celebrating yourself, getting to know yourself, getting to know the environment too. I think that's huge. And yes, I would love to take it to a new level. I don't feel like I have the skills that you do to really do that. But I think that's amazing. I think that's great information too for our viewers, that it's to go within before you go without too.
Well, we can fast. Most of the time when we talk intermittent fasting, we're talking about food. But I'm gonna throw a tip out there. So if you got a note, pen, and paper. So what I teach my students, I have a class called Vision Quest, and it's a very tough course. But what we do, we go out and we leave all technology behind. And when I'm talking about technology, we do away with modern technologies such as metal blades, such as cordage, such as packing food in, because then, once they get to that point, and you're not just going to go out in the woods and go on a vision quest. I mean, it takes learning and education to get to that point, of course. But once you're there, you want to educate yourself. I mean, there's so much material online, and when it comes to identification and tree identification and things of that nature, but there's also a lot of bad information as well out there. So you almost have to like kind of wean through the bad and glean the good. But there's something about euphoric about going on the land and not taking anything with you for, and eating the plants. I get goosebumps when I talk about it. It makes me slow down, actually, when I think about it. But there's something about going out there and harvesting those, fishing and, catching fish and partaking of that from a fire that you've created with your own two hands. And fire is so important, not just for cooking food and purifying water, but it's a purification for the soul. It's purification for the mind. It's sit around the fire and you just kind of get lost glaring at the fire, and just you find yourself just kind of daydreaming in awe of the dancing flames. And it's such a euphoric thing to experience. And, so kind of getting back to my point is, if you are wanting to reconnect with yourself, you want to reconnect with the land. Well, don't just do intermittent fasting with your cell phone. Do intermittent fasting with your television. Take time, if it's an hour a day, when you don't have business. If you're a business owner, I get it. Hey, I'm there. I understand. It's like you want to be, you feel like you're on call 24/7, but you have to know. So fast, take the time to go on a small hike without a cell phone, without any connection with the outside world. And you're going to notice as soon as you do, you're going to feel fear, a little bit of fear. If you're not used to doing this, you're going to feel a little bit of fear and a little bit of anxiety. And in the 21st century, people are like, oh, that's bad advice, because what if something happens? Well, if something happens, good, because now you've got to rely on yourself more. And that's even studying and training to be prepared for that. One thing that I is that I don't have to rely on anyone. I don't have to rely on anyone for power, anyone for, to bring me all of these, we call necessities of life, because truly I don't need it without it. And I've done it my whole life, and is it for everyone? No. But if you want to reconnect, and fast from those things because one more, when you think indigenous peoples, which we are, we were born with a tribe like, we were born in a tribe. You have those that are hunter gatherers. You have take care of camp. You have those who gather firewood. You have those who are master crafters who craft clothing, who may do beadwork. And the inside of a tribe, you will trade amongst your fellow men. You'll trade, and your early indigenous tribes were matriarchal societies. Actually, we won't get there yet, but so there would trade. But now in society, to the point that it's all about what I need, what I want, what I can take, and not give. And that's a major issue in society. If we would come back mentality, then people would get along better. And that's another battle for another day, but somebody's got to start it at some point. So learn acid from, the technology.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect point, and that's pretty much the question I was going to ask you. Moving on is, since you specialized in off-grid living, which is technically like a permanent digital detox in a way. Different ways for people who live busy lives in urban areas to be more self-sufficient and live off the grid. And I think you answered that perfectly with getting them out in nature, having them do these exercises with themselves, and tuning in is a great start too, just to build that connection again. Definitely. I'm going to ask you the next question, which I'm very interested in myself too. So you have survived through one of Utah's worst winter blizzards with just your saddlebags and your pack horse and a 22 caliber white rifle. And you did this in the worst winter storm, eating wild herbs and drinking the cold water. So tell us about this experience. Tell us how it happened, how you ended up through in the blizzard, and how you got through it too.
A friend of mine, we were going to buy a sailboat, and we were going to sail to Brazil, and that's how it started. And we didn't know anything. And so, but his cousin did, and his cousin was going to go with us. Well, kind of long story short, his cousin got hurt before the trip, and he was like, I call him up, or he calls me up, and he's like, "Hey, my cousin got hurt, blah blah blah. We're not gonna be able to do that now." And so I was like, "Well, let's grab the ponies and let's ride across the state of Utah. Let's do no technology. Let's cut a trail, yeah." And I was 23. I'm 34 now. No, I was 21. I'm getting old already. 21, man, fun. So I maybe became in modern society to take a saddle on board a Frontier airline flight and put a saddle in overhead baggage. So yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, I went out and we just wanted to ride. We wanted to disconnect and get away from things, and we started this ride, and we went ultimately ended up in the Uinta mountain range. Well, the first 3 to 4 day trip were hell, like literally hell. It was hail, thunderstorms. It was just the craziest. At the end of July, going toward the end of July, I had prepped, but we had one pack horse. Really no crazy heavy coats, just some rain slickers and stuff like that. Had a 22 rifle to be able to take small game. I had a 45 lone Colt. 45 lone Colt is actually a caliber. I had a Colt 45 lone Colt pistol with me. And it's a big enough caliber, so if you get charged by a bear, it'll stop a bear, keep the mountain lions at bay, so to speak. Keep the predators at bay. And we had been going up a switchback, and we get up. I guess we got up to about 9,000 feet above sea level, and all of a sudden a blizzard just hit us. It was actually known as one of Utah's 15 years or better. and we're getting pounded by snow. Our horses are tired already. Um, it was just things were just falling apart really, really quickly. 60 winds. The winds were so strong you couldn't. It's impossible to get a fire going unless you're doing a Dakota fire pit, which is an underground fire. You guys can Google that. What a Dakota fire pit is. So anyway, we get up there. We're in, the horses are up to their chest in snow, and we're stuck for about, I guess, 4 to 6 hours. You kind of lose track of time, and went through the first stages of hypothermia. Like when your core temperature drops and your body you start getting those shakes. That's your body's alarm going off saying, "Hey, you need to warm up." Well, I went past that to the point where my lungs became dried out, where I caught it up. Snow, you can't see 2 foot in front of you. It's a complete whiteout. And we're, high up on the mountains. And after being stuck in it, I mean, you become numb. You get to a point where you become sleepy. When you start getting sleepy, if you fall asleep, then, I mean, you don't wake back up. So our horses have given out. And I get a little emotional talking about this sometimes because it was a change for me. I changed a lot of directions in my life at this point in time. But, we're up high. Everything's going to a hell in a handbasket, so to speak. And the clouds moved just for a minute, and I could see below the storm. And I knew we needed to get below the storm. And we went off the side of a ledge that wasn't designed to be going down on horses. Wind up rolling horse, busted a few ribs, messed up a finger. But we got below the storm, and for 3 days, it took over 3 days to recoup from that blizzard. Just from the hypothermia. And it wasn't like we just walked into the storm. I mean, we'd been dealing with a lot of cold at elevation, all the rain. We'd been soaking wet the whole time, and once we got below the storm, I mean, literally hobbled my horse, stripped down, built a huge fire, and walked around naked for 3 days, drying all our stuff out. And it was like the most euphoric time of my life, because it made you it's like people are living right now and they don't know it, because it's like they get discouraged in life. People fight depression, they fight anxiety. It could be your job. Maybe you hate your career. You hate some of the choices that you made. I just don't give up. It's like when you see your own blood, then you realize, like, oh man, I am alive. And when you start seeing your life leave you, it wakes you up. And so I'm gonna, as an encouragement to the listeners, it's like, you might be going through hard times, but it doesn't mean that you can't change. You can change right now. You can start making better decisions. You can make better choices, right? Because your health, your wellness is the most important thing in life right now. Because it's like lying. If you'll lie to yourself, you'll lie to anyone. And if you'll treat yourself food and to too much technology, and you just give yourself away and give your mind away to all this trash that's out there, you're destroying yourself. If you'll destroy yourself, you'll destroy anyone. And now is the time to change. And coming off that trip, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to teach everything that I had been raised around. And now that's my go-to. I disappear in the backcountry, but I'm prepared for it, and like when we talk about getting away, about if you're not comfortable going out in the middle of nowhere, you shouldn't. It's ignorant just to go out to the middle of nowhere and not have any sort of skill sets behind you. So do some research first. Prep your mind, prep your body, prep your. If you, I always say, if you hone your skills, you will own your skills. Your skills up, because sometimes it's prepping here first, and once you start prepping the mind, then the body, you get the body going out, nature, then you're confident, and there's no greater feeling than going out and knowing that, man, I could live here, I could be a part. So there's no better time in the world than now to start making good decisions. Sometimes it takes a little time to get away from the bad decisions, but people don't need to go what I went through, to get my, predicament, and it wasn't on purpose, of course. But it was a wake up call for me. Man, what am I doing? Like, where am I at? So matter of fact, I just lost my dad. My dad got 2 years ago, right at 2 years ago. And it was the toughest time of my life. My dad got killed on a tree down, the tree kicked out, and I escaped to the woods because it was so emotionally traumatic for me to lose him. I knew that I couldn't be around society, so I escaped for about 3.5 weeks. I was trying to maintain normal everyday things, but I made sure in the evenings I was disappearing, and finally I wound up staying gone for a couple weeks, getting away from everything. And I remember one night I was sitting around a fire, and had been so depressed about losing my dad, thinking all these negative thoughts. And it was about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. It was cold out. It was late fall, and I remember I just stripped off. I stripped off butt naked, and I jumped into this freezing cold pond. And it was like every negative thought that I had left immediately. And it was like I woke myself up and I was like, oh my God, I'm still alive. And all the negativity left, and it was like I was baptized. I get goosebumps thinking about this. When I jumped in and I come out of that water, it was a meaning for me. And sometimes that's what we need to do. Sometimes you just need to strip yourself down of everything and dive into nature, and you will be so happy and so thrilled with what you come out of. And sometimes it'll break you. Sometimes that's what it takes. It's getting out there by yourself and hitting that point where, like it's time for change. And when you go in the water and you come back up, it's like, man, like, oh God, I'm still alive. I remember just coming out of the water. Couldn't hardly breathe, swimming back to shore, got my buffalo rug and wrapped my buffalo rug up around me and got by the fire. And it was just like, and it was that we need that. We're human beings. We're emotional. We face troubles. We face trials. We face tribulations. We need a rejuvenation point somewhere, whether it's daily or weekly or monthly in our lives, to cope with all the bullcrap that's out there. Because we are not designed to deal with all this technology. We are not designed to follow trends and do what everybody thinks is cool, because it steals our character. It steals our soul. It robs us from ourselves, So what are we doing with our life? What are we doing? I didn't mean to get too deep, but I was like, just trying to kind of relay some of my experience,
No, I think that's very, very powerful too. With your first experience in the Utah winter storm and with your dad, you took these two very, very intense, emotional, very hard experiences and transitioned them in a way. You realized your own mortality. You appreciated the moment more and your life, and then also you use nature as your outlet to get through all of those emotions. And I think the stress level of everybody in today's society is so high, and it's so unnatural in so many ways. And what you have been able to do is to use that outlet and then to appreciate those things too, appreciate the nature and appreciate where you are and at that moment by dealing with your own mortality and your father's death. I think that's incredibly powerful, and I'm glad you shared that with all of us too.
Well, it's we have to. Yeah, I think that's the biggest issues, and I'm no therapist by no means, but I think that's one of the biggest issues with marriages now. I think relationships as a whole. Um, People get married because of trends. They get married for all the wrong reasons, whether it's lust or greed or how can you pick a partner in life? How can you pick a partner in life when you don't even know who you are as an individual and you haven't taken time to spend time with yourself, face your own demons, yet you're willing to take the responsibility of going into a lifelong relationship with your partner and you don't even know who you are? I think the best thing that a person can do is to spend a minimum of 2 weeks alone somewhere. If you think relationship, a lifelong relationship with a partner, go spend 2 weeks by yourself in the middle of nowhere. Glam. Just go spend 2 weeks by yourself and see who you are. You can understand someone else. Because I promise you, you're going to be such a face. It's going to change you. And you might even find you might want to go, you might spend 2 weeks and realize, man, I need to go spend a month. Because how can we connect with another human being when we can't even connect with ourselves? And it's impossible to be able to with technology. You have to break that mold. You have to get away from it and immerse yourself in the wilderness, partake of what we were designed to be a part of, that we've gotten so far away from. Understand yourself, and then you so many things. It's like I had a youth. I was teaching the camp, spending some time with the youth, and they had never camped out, and they went out and went camping. Uh, Went out camping for the first, and they were sleeping and woke up the next morning, and I asked them, I said, "Well, how was your experience?" I was with a group. I said, "How was your experience?" And if I woke up and I felt like all the birds, things in life that we need to get back to. Simplicity is a life. I don't care if you do or not, but a good quote: "The little foxes will spoil the vine." And I think it's a little thing. It spoils us. It messes us up. It deters us. It's technology. It's our job. It's our careers. It's because we get so surrounded and immersed into careers for what? What is your motivation? Like, I don't. There's nothing wrong with going out and hustling, getting your hustle on, and you know, if you want nice things, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't forget about your inside, your inward man, because there's a lot of people that are depressed. There's people out there they get, they've got, but they battle with depression and anxiety because they don't take the time to understand who they are. And I can't push this enough. I can't beat this. It's like a friction. It's like a bow drill fire, a friction fire. It's like a song of the fire. It's like you start off with a tempo of rolling the wood on wood, and you speed it up, and it builds the friction. And as you build the friction, it gets hotter and hotter. And then all of a sudden you have a coal, and then you take that coal and you put the coal into a tinder bun by oxygen, blowing oxygen into it, and it combusts in the fire. And that's who we are as human beings. Sometimes we need to take time and put oxygen in, and we have that spark, we have that ember to a flame, and rekindle that. We have to rekindle ourselves. So it's, learn yourself before you relationship. who are you as an individual, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, I have it from a different perspective, but I think we kind of converge on the same plane because I lived in Greece for many years, and Greece is where the ancient philosophers came from, and Socrates, know thyself. They lived in caves for years trying to figure out who they were and clearing their subconscious and what's going on and what's them and what's not and dealing with nature. And so I've been exposed to that very heavily when I was in Greece and studying from them and going to the caves where they lived and everything. And I think that it's human nature. It's the core to develop it. Even Hippocrates, one of the fathers of modern medicine. But the irony is, I guess he's a founder of modern medicine, but his core was tuning into your body, learning to listen to yourself, finding everything from nature, like the art of hydrotherapy to even jumping into cold water, all of these different things. So I 100% agree with you. And I see it from a different perspective from a different country. But at the same time, everything comes together, and it's going for that common goal of finding yourself and tuning in with nature and finding yourself in nature too. I think that's very beautiful.
Well, there's something beautiful. I have a theory. It's probably not right, but it's my theory, so I'll keep it. And, but there's something about it's like it's beautiful to walk barefooted until you step. Um, so it's like you have to be aware and life is, I got bit by a rattlesnake last year. Luckily it didn't penetrate my boot that I had on. This is not where I was going with that, but I have a theory. There's something about getting dirt under your fingernails. It's a beautiful thing to get, and that's why so many people connect with gardening, because we are organic.
Mm-hmm.
That has the breath of life in it. And when we die, we're going to go back to earth, back to land. It's not going to matter about your career. Your career is not going to matter. How much money you have is not going to matter. None of that stuff's going to matter. Well, you're just going to be organic dust. You're going to go back to the earth, and your breath of life, your air breath is going to be floating around in the atmosphere. And whatever you believe, whether you're agnostic or atheist or Christian, no matter what you believe, but one day you're going to go back to organic material, and we walking, breathing organic. So when you go out and you get your hands and fingers in dirt, it's my theory that dirt gets up under your nails. All those minerals and all those good things that, the water, just there's so many good things in the earth that we need, that it gets of your nerves, it hits your bloodstream and it becomes part of your DNA, and you actually can become one with the earth. And that's why you fall in love with certain pieces of ground that you work, or your gardening spot, or connection that's deeper. It's because you were in it. You were taking in the minerals and taking in all those positive things and healthy things. And you get to visualize it, maybe looking at flowers or your bushes, shrubs, whatever it is that you're working with. And it's just like, so being able to get out there, it's a connection point. And it grounds you. It just grounds you. And it's like, man, it's like, about it. I always brought it up. It's like doing things in life, they cure these disease things, but they can do anything in the world, but they go camping and get away from everything and build a dang fire. Why is that? It's because it's what we were created to do. Everything's so unnatural. So, it's like, it's not even a part of us. It's not even who we are. We don't need all this crap. It's like, we get this crap around us. We just choose to do it because why? Because we've thing in our head, this false need that, oh, I've got to have that to live. I've got to drive this to live. I've got to wear this to live. I've got to, have these things to be accepted by society. And it just shows weakness. And that's why I feel like this is arrogant what I'm about to say, but I can walk amongst kings and peasants and treat no different. I don't have a problem because I know who I am as an individual. And it takes breaking down. Sometimes you need to go back to the cave to find out. There's a lesson that you just brought out a good point. There's a lesson. Sometimes we just need to go back to the cave. That's going to be my new quote,
Yeah, definitely. No, I know. My dream too is to literally go into a cave in Greece for a couple months. Like at some point, that literally is my dream, to go deeper. I mean, the philosophers literally went there for years, but with the balance of life and work and everything, I think for me, it's a beautiful experience. And I think really what you're telling everybody too is finding that balance, understanding why we're here and tuning in with nature. And what's so interesting is there's so many amazing trials right now in health that are saying, oh, people have less allergies if they're around more animals, or if they garden or they play in dirt, their immune system's stronger when they're older. I mean, this is basic knowledge that you would think, okay, I'm in nature, I'm playing this should normally happen, but we're finally using science and saying, yeah, this is exactly how we're supposed to live. And it supports your body and your stress and everything, because they need that side as well to prove that definitely. So I'm going to ask you a question, a more practical question. So everyone has the dream, of running off and living in nature, away from the hustle and bustle, to live the simple life. But it's also very hard work. Like you've said, what do you want to tell our viewers about your personal experience if they have this idea that they want to, they're living in the city now, they want to change their life? What advice would you give them on how it's like living off the grid? And would you recommend it to them, or have them kind of go in a step-by-step process? What would you tell them?
So the first thing I want to add to something right before you ask the question, but we live in a protected society, problem. And this is going to take us right into the question. But we live in a protected society. First of all, if you guys off the Nintendos and let those youngins get dirty, kick them outside, because you're going to see it's going to change them in a good way. Get them outside, take them outside. I had to say that. I'm sorry. It drives me. And plus, it's going to give you a minute by yourself. Get outside, turn them little sap suckers loose. It's like so many people protect, and they're actually doing more harm, because talk about violence. Oh my God. It's like these Nintendo games and all this crap. Anyway, let your youngins go get dirty. It's one piece of advice. But to answer your question, homesteading and living off grid is you'll know within the first 2 weeks if it's for you or not. I'll tell you that up front. It can be really difficult. And I always give everybody the negative side before the positive side. I grew up like this, so it's it was the norm for me. But I want you to think about something. If you think that you want to live off grid, I would do it on a trial basis. I think if that's something that you're wanting to do, I would tell everybody to do it. It's an awesome thing. But the sacrifice is way awesome rewards. First of all, go, do it on a trial basis. Go rent you a place, spend the money. I see so many people, they'll go out and buy a piece of property. I have seen this. I've seen this thousands of times, hundreds and thousands of times. People just to get this idea they go buy a piece of property, and they spend the money on the property. They build this cool little cutesy house that's trending, and then they hate it. They absolutely hate it because then they realize all the work that it goes into doing it. And then I've seen just the opposite. I've seen people do it and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they sell everything they have that for the rest of their lives. But do it on a trial basis. Go out, rent a cabin in the woods somewhere I do it for 3 months. Rent a cabin in the woods for a couple, 2 or 3 months. There's so many coalitions out there. I'm sure you could actually probably group with someone else that has the same ideas, maybe something like that. Because it's tough. I mean, when you go out there, if you're used to being on your lazy boy and reaching over and turning a dial to set your temperature, I got news for you. If you go off grid, unless you are willing to deal with solar, it's not going to be that way. But the positive side, it is so amazing to know that you're not relying on any outside source unless it's just an extra, like if you have a propane tank or something like that, you want to use propane, or you want to use solar. I mean, technology is in a good way, how with solar power and LED lights and little, all these things, makes nice. The beauty is when you can walk outside and see your garden that you're eating, and just it's a part of you. No noises outside. It's a life changing. I've experienced the good and the bad. I mean, I almost got kicked off of a homestead before. Read your laws. There's another piece of advice. Know your laws. You don't want to go buy a piece of property somewhere that it's got, and then go to building an off-grid house and somebody gets ticked off about it and calls the law. So I mean, yeah, there's just, we live in a society where I think people sometimes get jealous, and I've dealt with the positives and the negatives on a trial basis. So go out, rent a place for a couple months or a month, see how you like it, see if that's what you want to do, because it change you. I tell you something too. It's it pulls you away. The more you do it, the more you dive in, it's going to pull you away to think like that, because because it's going to make you use your mind in a way that you've never had before, because then you're responsible for everything. Like you're not relying on the power company and relying on the propane guy and relying on the natural gas people and relying on the water company to get your water to you. It's gonna make you start thinking as a primal individual, and it's gonna to a place that you want to be. I can promise you that you want to be. But the rewards of is bar none the best high out there. It's amazing. It's like harvesting your own food in the wild. I realize every portion of that species, every bit of it. And when you do that, and then you're like, I'm getting more than just meat and clothing, or meat and hides, bones. I love the marrow of the bone. I make needles from the bone. I make arrowheads from the bone. Lots of stuff with it. So, and then once you start diving in, it's like homesteading. Once you start diving into homesteading, the off-grid life, you're going to learn so much. And, again, get with a group of people. There's so many groups out there. Get with a group of people that are like-minded. Don't be, because you're going to have so many haters out there. People are going to come against you. You're going to do a lot of haters. People think I'm crazy for saying this, but I've seen it. Find like-minded people. Before you get rid of the negative people out of your life anyway. besides that. People in your life, you need to walk away from that. I think that's one of the biggest things that they make like they're attached to negative people, and they have to be attached to them because there's blood or something like that. You could love someone from afar, so start here mentally, read, study up on it, figure out what your lifestyle you want to do, or what kind of homesteading you want to do, and work on yourself before you start making big decisions, because it's going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It always starts within. And I like the idea of going slow, to taking baby steps into it, giving it a trial run instead of jumping in, selling everything and buying land. I think that's great to talk to other people and to experience it for a little bit too. Because you can either love it or it can be a little too hard and a little too uncomfortable. I can see that too. So I want to talk to you about the school you have. So you're the founder of Four Winds Survival School, and you teach people a lot of great skills like primitive fire building. Tell me some of the skills that you teach in this, and how we can all kind of benefit, and the people that you teach. Like, who do you teach in this school? Is it kind of a mix of everyone, or tell us about that?
Yeah, so I start with the basics. I start with a basics course, basics class, and it's called a FWS class. It's fire, water, shelter class. And what I do is just we'll typically go out for a day, and we go over the basics like of food, fire, water, and shelter, why we need them, when we need them, properly attain that. And so we start with the basics, and then and it's a progression from there. I'll teach basically like in the beginning, I've got a few things here I just thought about. So we'll actually go over. We'll do assessment. A lot of times, most of the time, that's the first thing I do is backpack assessments, or your survival tool, or your tool assessments. Because if you're a hiker or you're a camper, I think it's awareness. You need to have awareness because there's always opposition out there, whether it's wild game, wild predators, or other human beings, as far as that goes. So what we do is we teach how to properly use a lighter, properly use a match, and then we go into the ferrocerium rod, which is they strike it, it throws off sparks that are up to 3,000 degrees in heat, and they will ignite tinder. So in a basics, basically we'll take someone in and we'll say, okay, I'll give them a list before they come to the class and say to pick this up at a local Walmart or something like that, and teach them the basic necessities of when we think of survival, or we think of going out there, we have to think tools first, because tools are a very important thing. So what tools does it take for me to get started? And it's not expensive. You can spend as much money, and it's just like getting a car you want, but it's not needed. So first thing, you want some kind of a cutting tool, so you can cut things and process firewood, etc. You want some sort of device, whether to be able to create fire, and that can be a lighter, it can be a masserium rod, it can fire by friction, it can be flint and steel. So you want a cutting tool, a combustion device for you also want some sort of cordage. I like 550 cord, parachute cord is fine, just to be able to tie things up to build proper shelter. It just makes it easier. Also, you're going to learn but also for container here. And this can be important because this is one of the most difficult things to recreate from the wild, in the bush, so to speak. Solid waterproof container that you can not only cook things in, but you can also purify your water in this container by taking off the top and filling it up with water, and letting it come to a rollover boil for 15 seconds, and that will purify the water from Giardia or Cryptosporidium, etc. And so a container is a very nice thing to have. I see a lot of hikers running around with these plastic containers, and I'm like, oh, unless you have some sort of a life straw or purification tablets or purification straw to purify the water from Giardia and Cryptosporidium or any other water pathogens, then you need to be carrying some sort of a stainless steel pack when you're hiking or out and about, because with this, it's got so many, it's a multifunctional piece of kit. It's important. So we're nice cordage, a container, and you want some sort of a shelter, a cover. So, and when we think of shelter, why is shelter important? Because what if you're on a small hike and it starts raining or it starts snowing, or so we go with the basics of like a tarp at first. Properly use a tarp and how to make it, different manifestations of shelter with using a tarp. Do away with all that stuff and go 100% primitive. How to nap your own cutting tool, how to make a primitive fire for combustion plant life and actually make your own cordage, and then also how to once you get your cordage, how to make a proper cover, out there, out of using raw natural limbs and deadfall and leaves and just whatever's in your environment that you live in. And then also containers as well, how to make a container from the wild that you can carry and be waterproof, and how to do it all natural. So it starts off at the ends. When you go through the full class, I mean, you could literally walk with nothing into the woods, and use those skills. But I do tell people, if it comes down to a survival situation where you're a primitive fire, friction fire, you've messed up and screwed up in so many that's bad. So, preventive maintenance is one of the best things. And also, I teach psychology of survival, how to connect as a metaphorical shape shifting of the mind, how to get away from the humanistic ideology and reconnect with nature, better understand how to look and track and understand that are on the there. That's a wolf. These are things I don't want to be running into, because when you're in the wild, everything needs water, and that's one of the biggest mess ups I think that I see. They just go blindsidedly into a watering hole in a very remote wilderness, and boom, they run into a bear or something like that. So we teach. I call it psychology of survival of psychology, and which is one of the most important things. So yeah, I cover a very large variety, and I have all walks of life of people come to me.
Very nice. Yeah, that I just remembered something which is hilarious, and it goes really well with this. So I was on a run probably 10 years ago in downtown Seattle, and it was 10 o'clock at night, like running kind of towards the beach, and no one was around. It wasn't residential or anything. All the businesses were closed, and there was this rustling in the bushes, right? Maybe like 5 feet ahead of me. And it's just me. I don't have my cell phone. I don't have anything. I'm just running. And a bear comes out of the bushes in the middle of the city. Like, you think you're going to be in nature or something and prepared. And I didn't move, right? It was like me and a black bear just staring at each other 5 feet away. I'm like, is this real? Is this happening? And I didn't move. Like, it was more shock. And then the bear went across the street and ran up. But I'm like, is this what I'm going to do in nature? Am I just going to stand there? And I was just more in shock. How would that ever happen to anyone? How would they encounter a bear alone in the middle of the city? Like, it's crazy, but it always makes me realize, how would I respond to that in nature? Yeah.
Right.
And it was real. We
Right.
spotted the bear in other locations. So, I mean, it was a real occurrence.
Well, and that's one of the things that I focus on, especially in early stages, and something I keep a reminder is situational awareness. I think first aid is one of the most overlooked things across the board, hands down. When it comes into a survival situation, you have more chances of getting attacked by a shark if you go to the beach several times a year than you do falling into a survival situation where over 72 hours. And so what I most of the time teach is based on up to 72 hours. What I need to carry. And the biggest thing is the preparation before situational awareness. I have been charged by bears. I got chased by a bear 2 weeks ago. I encountered bears. It's once a week. It's just part of the country I'm in. But I've also been robbed 3 different times, and so I teach self defense. I teach a lot of different things. So we dive into a lot of different things, and yeah, if you live in the city, you need to be thinking what's situational awareness, understanding the environment that you're in, whether it be a restaurant. I'm more spooky in a restaurant, or when I go into not knowing, what's going on, or that's out there in today's world. It's situational awareness is a very, very, very important thing, to be aware of. Like when you walk into a place, where's the exits? How many people's in there? Kind of learning how to profile people a little bit. Same way with the wild. When you go into the wild, you want to say, okay, that's bear scat on the ground right there. I don't need to be continuing in the direction that I'm going, especially if you start seeing tracks and you see signs on trees. But let's just follow that direction. Then if you encounter that bear, what's next? What's the preparation, of what if? And like you said, you were in the city, that's something very least expected. And it's like, proper first aid, proper tourniquets. When we think tourniquets, I might not fall into a survival situation, first aid classes as well, wilderness first aid. But what if we're out and I break an arm, or I cut one of my arteries, or I cut a vein? What's a proper tourniquet to use? How do we use a proper tourniquet? Because there's this misconception that's out there that people think they're just going to pull their belt off and throw a belt on, and I got news for you: you're going to die. I mean, like when you think of your arteries in your smallest artery and your smallest vein in your body, you can bleed out of. Completely bleed out in a little over 3 minutes. So, and the largest, I think, is around 60 seconds or so, you can bleed out. You start so much involved to be prepared for. So what are you biding your time with now? It's like, to me, I wanted to, so I can protect myself. I can protect someone else if needed. Because if you fall into a situation, because once you fall into a situation, just like you said, you kind of froze, you're going to drop to about 10 to 15% of what your training is going to be. And this is a military thing. Military teaches. So you're going to drop whatever your best training is. You're going to drop to about 10 to 15% of that. So that's why practice, learning how to use this. Everybody has car insurance. Everybody has house insurance. Why not have insurance yourself? Self-sustainability is probably the best insurance out there, without a doubt.
Definitely, no question. So I want to ask you one last question, because I know that we can talk pretty much forever. It's very interesting, all of this. But I want to know what you're up to now. You're a reality TV consultant. You have a lot of great things going on, school. So tell us what you can about what you have going on right now.
Yeah. Yes, going on. I do a lot of things. I'm an entrepreneur. I enjoy just doing what I want to do in life, not what I have to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I run a buffalo ranch, so I raise buffalo daily. I'm around 215 buffalo. I have a school. I work with several major television networks, and I am under contract with one of those networks, and I won't go any further than that. But look to the future, you might see something come up on your screen. Um, and I approach it from a different perspective. You know, I teach when I'm working. I do a lot of risk mitigation, risk assessment with a lot of television. Someone's going on where they're doing something. Sometimes it's behind the camera, or maybe even be behind a computer or over a telephone consulting, or they'll fly me into location, and I'll do assessments that way. You know, because for these shows to actually kick off, there's always the background guys that set
Mm-hmm.
things up, and I'm one of those guys. So I get to travel a lot. I'm also I was in somewhat professionally for about 5 years. So I play. I do at least 2 to 3 gigs plus music gigs in actually around Wyoming weekly. So yeah, I'm a singer songwriter. I have a lot going on. I'm consistent, and then also I guide hunts as well. I'm a trapper. Not culturalistic skills, but indigenous primitive skills back for what we call um, when a child is going from a child to a man, or you know, from a girl to a lady.
Mm-hmm.
So call it rite of passage. So I've helped them with the rite of passage, how to dive into nature and do it from a primitive standpoint. So I have a lot going on.
Yeah, definitely. Um, but it's very inspiring too. It seems like you're following your passion. You're doing everything that you love doing, and it all involves and revolves around nature too, which is inspiring, I think, for all of us.
Well, you
So what
know, it's not work if you enjoy doing it. It's not
exactly,
work if you enjoy doing it.
exactly. So how can people get a hold of you? What if they want to go into your school, or if they have questions, how do we find you?
So the best thing is actually, I'm not as active as, and it's for specific reasons right now on social media. However, my personal page, Josh, if you look up Joshua Native Kirk, you can go to Joshua Native Kirk, shoot me a private message, and I don't mind giving my cell phone out. Everybody's like, oh God, I can't believe you do that. No, I'll give my cell phone out. You know, if you call me and I don't want to talk to you, I just want to talk to you. But but also the business line is 678-898-5099. That's 678-898-5099. That's my cell phone. You can call me, and you know, like I said, if you're interested, also, or you can shoot me an email at the number 4 win survival school.com. One more time, number wins WINDS survival school at gmail.com. Shoot me an email, or you can go on my Facebook page, 4 Win Survival School on Facebook. Like I said, shoot me a friend request, or shoot me a private message, and we'll connect one way or another. I'm old school. You know, I like a telephone call too. I'm a telephone call or an email, probably most, or text. Text and email is the best way because I'm out of service all the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was inspiring and educating, and thank you for taking the time during your extremely busy day too. You definitely have a lot going on, but I appreciate it, and I think our viewers will be very inspired and educated and motivated to get out there. So thank you very
Well,
much,
Michele,
Joshua.
it was my pleasure. Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye.